Welcome to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called On Your Own Time. Decades ago, I worked for a small bank. They treated the employees rather poorly, but the job was easy and it had decent benefits. There were 2 tellers and 2 supervisors in our branch, and each level held half of the vault combination, because vaults are under dual control. In the event of an emergency, the other half of the combination can be obtained. But the vault would need expensive locksmith service ASAP to change the combination and restore the dual control. I needed to see the dentist and preferred early morning appointments. I had negotiated with my colleague for coverage. She would take my early hours and I would take her late hours in exchange, and we would be even, all while ensuring that the branch was covered. Both of us were team players and had this arrangement for a long time. One day, when I had an early morning dental appointment, my colleague's car broke down. I arrived at work at the agreed upon late start time and was greeted by my branch manager. He immediately started screaming at me because they had to break dual control and get the emergency combinations due to my lateness and my colleague's car trouble. I told him where I was and that the plan was to swap, and he continued to yell, "Go to the dentist on your own time." From that day forward, I went to the doctor or dentist on my own time. I had plenty of sick leave and I used it, and they paid me for the whole day every time. My last minute call-outs ensured chaos and additional expensive locksmith calls. Sometime later, I had a bad accident. I went on short-term disability and was entitled to full salary during my disability because of benefits. Then, after exhausting my entire short-term disability benefit, I quit. The bank was bought out shortly after I left. The next story is called No Partial Refunds. So I booked a flight for the 24th of December to visit my grandparents. Trying to be responsible, I booked the flight 8 weeks in advance. I paid €150 for both flights. And sure, I'll pay that €60 for a suitcase. So all is good and I forget about the flight. Well, last week I get an email telling me that the flight time has changed. So I check it and it departs 2 hours earlier. 3 days later, ping, another email. But now the flight is a day prior. I have university that day, let me see what I can do. I contact customer service, jump through the hoops, but there is no alternative flight. While browsing, I noticed that the flight is now a bit cheaper, €40 cheaper. So I asked if I can get a partial refund or an upgrade for the inconvenience of the flight leaving earlier and me reshuffling my schedule. Well, nope. They insist that I can only accept the flight or cancel it fully. I hold off, not worth the hassle I think. Who knows how long it takes to get my money back. So after a few days I checked the flight again. Wow, they reduced the price even more. Now the asking price is $7.99. That's almost free. So I asked again if a partial refund is possible. Still no. Okay, no problem. Please cancel my booking. 24 hours later, they notify me the full refund has been processed. Great, so now I booked the flight again, for just €16 both ways. Now that's a cheap flight. The taxi to the airport cost me more. But hey, no partial refund. The third story is called 2 hours before the shift start. Recently, I have been dealing with health issues and a C-19 scare after being exposed to someone who recently tested positive. My boss has been very vocal with me by constantly asking me to do half days and or begging me to come back the next day. For some background, I work with children. I have also shown multiple signs of C-19 over the past week, so I'm working on finding a time to take a test. My boss is way more concerned about me going back to work because of our short staff, rather than making sure I'm healthy enough to be around the kids. Needless to say, it's been frustrating. Yesterday morning, I called my boss up at around 7 AM, an hour before my shift started, to call off another day because I was still showing symptoms. She was obviously angry about it and decided to give me a lecture on how company policy states call-offs must be 2 hours before your shift. Okay, so I would have to call her at 6 AM before the building even opens up for the day. Not to mention her shift doesn't even start until 7:30, so I would most definitely be waking her up early. I tried to be respectful of her schedule, but I guess company policy doesn't allow that. Last night I set an alarm for 5:55 AM to check on my symptoms and see if I need another day. Sure enough, I was still sick. I called my boss at 6 AM sharp and waited for her to pick up. She finally answered and in the most groggy voice asked what I was calling for. I told her I was calling off again to take care of myself to schedule my test again. Her response, I kid you not, was something along the lines of, Why would you call me this early? The next story is called Punishment for Insubordination. I was in high school in the 90s and working part-time in a grocery store. I was hired for the produce department. All my friends worked the front line, mostly begging for cashiers and retrieving shopping carts. I have always been an overachiever at work and I actually liked my job. My supervisors were all cool and I was doing the job for extra spending money after school, so I wasn't heavily invested in it because I also delivered newspapers in the morning. The only thing that sucked was having to work weekends. One day I forgot my hat. Or maybe I just didn't feel like wearing it that day because I recently dyed my hair green and wanted to show it off. I don't remember. But I do know that there was no specific code about hair color in the handbook and hats were only required if you were prepping food or in a section like the deli. My direct supervisor liked my hair and said I fit in great with all the veggies and I should focus on stocking all the green stuff that shift. She was sure the customers would enjoy it. We both laughed and I did my job. A couple of hours later, towards the end of my shift, this grumpy general manager, let's call him Bob, was not happy I forgot my hat and decided to grill me about it. We happened to be in front of the customer service desk at the time. He went on and on for a while about young people and poor work ethic. He was really on it about how lazy kids are and so on and so forth. Now keep in mind I always did my job well, never had any complaints or anything like that. This was my first time ever getting a speech from a boss like this. Eventually he got around to it and flat out asked me, "Where's your hat?" "Oh, well, gee Bob, I think I forgot it at home." "You forgot it at home? How could you forget it? You see, this is what I'm talking about. What if I took your paycheck home and forgot it there?" Now, I was not sure if he wanted an answer. So I stood there for what just felt like an eternity, just looking at him while my teenage brain was processing everything. "Well?" Bob asked again. Now I knew he actually expected me to answer. So I said, "Excuse me Bob, I don't understand." His face started to crinkle with anger. The customer service ladies were watching and intently enjoying the show. "What don't you understand?" "Well, doesn't accounting handle the checks? I mean, you don't actually do anything with them." He started to look even angrier at this point. But I was too dumb to care. So I went on. "I mean, that's my understanding, so I don't know how my check could even get to your house unless you stole it or something from the accounting people." The customer service ladies burst out laughing. He looked at them sharply and told me to go home and think about what I did. And I would be lucky if I still had a job. I wasn't sure if I was being fired or not. I really was in some kind of shock. So I asked, "You mean I get to go home early tonight?" Again, the customer service ladies chuckled while trying to look busy. I went home a little upset, but tried to look on the bright side, so I got home early, did my homework and relaxed. I went in for my shift the following day, only to find out I was taken off the schedule. "Sorry, I don't see you on here. It looks like Bob changed the schedule. You are not on until next week." Just then Bob strolls over with this "I got you now" look on his face and I knew his game. So I smiled and said, "That's great, it will be so nice to have a little vacation." I smiled at him and then thanked him. This really worked him over. I guess he couldn't actually fire me, so he was trying to make things bad for me. He said, "Oh, one more thing, I don't think produce is right for you. I've decided to move you to the front as punishment for insubordination. I've already filed the paperwork." "Bob, really? The front? Are you sure?" He smiled, thinking he has won. "Well, that's fantastic. All my friends work over there and that's the position I originally applied for. Thank you so much. I'll see you in a week." I left with the biggest smile on my face. When I finally came back, all the front managers officially welcomed me to their team. I was already quite friendly with many of them because I would help out up there from time to time. I was still getting my higher pay rate from produce. And best of all, Bob never bothered me again. I got to goof off and work way less than before. Some of my fondest memory of that place are when I would just hang out in the parking lot with the other beggars, generally having a good time. Never got any complaints there either. The fifth story is called Company Policy. I was working as a yard operative for a big logistics company in the early 2000s. The job had a lot of variety and involved a lot of forklift activity. The boss was an absolute jerk. She wrote me up for not wearing a hard hat in my forklift, while a crane operator stood next to her, also not wearing a hard hat. The forklift I used was an ancient bag of poo, functional but badly corroded and never maintained. One day, the company introduced a tax system whereby the operator had to do checks and sign off on the card to say the forklift was good to go. I told the boss my forklift would fail at the first hurdle due to too many things being wrong with it, but she insisted on the new policy. Well, on the first day of the tag system being live, Mickey Mouse signed the tag. The second day it was Donald Duck. The boss went crazy and threatened to get rid of me unless I followed procedure. So cue malicious compliance. I came in the next day and did the checks. The forklift had steel wire sticking out of the ball tires, so it was an immediate fail and I took it straight to the garage for new tires. No tires in stock, so I reported it to my charge hand, not the boss, and got on with other work. It took her about 3 days to realize my forklift work wasn't being done, and she lost the plot when she found out why. There was nothing she could do though, as I was following procedure. Her thinking was that I was going to sign off on the tag, do my job and take liability for the truck when it screwed up. When that didn't happen, she became an even greater jerk and started actively monitoring my every move. She got rid of me a few months later for something else involving a day's leave. But by then I was ready to leave anyway. The excellent money I was earning there was outweighed by the hassle of dealing with her. She got sacked a few years ago for stealing fuel and buying a personal car through the company to get some sort of discount. The last story is called Worth It. This happened in college. We had a project with an assigned group of 5. We didn't know each other. I am convinced teachers do this not so we learn how to work in groups, but rather so they only have to mark 6 papers instead of 30. One of the other 4 showed up to one of our team meetings once. The others never showed up at all. The one who did show up brought no work, no laptop, no pen or paper. Was just there. Everyone had a specific section to work on, and we were to present in class as a group. Throughout the term we had a Google Doc where we could upload our work. One signed on once and did nothing else. One asked one question. What is this even about? One said this was stupid and he wasn't doing it. The other one copy-pasted Wikipedia and that was it. Everything was divided evenly and every week we were to check in with the professor in regards to questions or problems. I didn't hold back, so I simply asked what would happen if I only do my part because the other 4 were flaking out and not even coming to class. Her response was that we'd all fail. So fine, I did everything. On the day of the presentation, they all showed up. It was worth about 40% of our grade. The class had a copy of the presentation and the professor had a line-by-line version of what we were going to present as well as the written report. I gave the introduction and let the other 4 present their parts. They never once asked to see any of it or read any of it beforehand. They were just going to present. Okay. The PowerPoint was just a photo, no text, and none of them had anything to say. One tried to sum up my introduction and he looked worse for trying. The other simply refused to go to the podium. What I did not do is put the text on the PowerPoint for any of our parts, which means I had to memorize my intro, my section and the conclusion. In my support for the conclusion, I summarized what they were supposed to say, so it made sense. The written report only had my name on it, and I included an addendum for the other 4 people's contribution in total. It was a printout of our work Google Doc with all their names and contributions, including the plagiarized Wikipedia. They were angry at me for not including the text, or specifically, screwing up their parts. They didn't even know the topic of the presentation, let alone what they were supposed to say. My professor said we'd all get the same grade, and because 4 of the 5 sections were incomplete, it would be a failing grade. I was going into that presentation with a 98%, so even if I'd got a 0, I'd pass the course. But there was no way I was accepting that. There's an appeal process that goes to the chair of the program and then the dean of the school. On the day of the appeal meeting with the chair of the program, I was informed that they decided I would be graded for my part and the other 4 would get a 0. I got an 85, which honestly was a low grade for that work, but the other 4 failed the program. If I had put the text in the PowerPoint and just let them read it, they would probably have passed and I would have upped my average from 93 to 95 or something like that. But I regret nothing, it was so worth it. And with that, we end today's video. Let me know what you think about the stories. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the stories and today's video? I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. And I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.